opinion, Brad left Jen for Angie, and the picture kind of says a little bit about why, without looking too far. So first what we're going to start with is the center chart is Brad's natal chart, and on the outside is Jen's chart overlaid on top of his. And what I've found in my studying is that for really good compatibility, the more you have planets lined up exact side by side, the more of those combinations you have, the better chance of success and longevity. Now that doesn't mean it has to be that way. You can have wonderful, fabulous combinations between planets that are really good and really helpful. But the more you have planets combined like this and like this, the better. So what Brad and Jen had in common, first and foremost, was this right here is his Jupiter. And Jupiter is the largest planet in the sky. It basically represents everything good, everything positive. It's just a wonderful, generally helpful planet. And Jen had right at that exact same point, 9 degrees, Venus, the planet of love, money, everything wonderful, warm, and cozy, as a general rule. So that was one thing that pulled the two of them together. In addition, over here, where Brad has the planet Mercury, which stands for self-expression, how you express yourself, how you speak, how you communicate, Jen has sitting right on top of that, within a degree, an asteroid that's symbolic of motherhood. So I would venture from looking at this, had they stayed together, they would have had kids, but they didn't stay together. The other thing I'll point out is that I've circled other things in the middle here on Brad's chart that are 10, 10, 10, 11, 9. I've circled them because they're significant for him. When you have planets that are basically at the same general degree, that's very, very important. And all it does is it magnifies Jen's connection right there. There's a connection way up here that's got dotted lines around it. That is a little bit different, and that's something where Jen's midheaven up there is focused on Brad from a point of fate. It's not reversed. He has no focus on her. She's mentally focused on him, so she's probably never going to get over him. But, so that's Brad and Jen. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a chart that shows Brad and Angie next to it so that you can see the comparison. And then in a second I'm going to go just to Angie so that you can see it better. But I want to point out something before I do that. Where I showed you before the significance of this Jupiter-Venus connection between the two, Jupiter and Mars. And they're both, you know, even though this is a 10, it's a very low 10. This is a high 9, so it's very close. And where Venus is love, money, everything good and cuddly and nice, Mars is the physical planet, sex. Very, very, that's why I said if you look at the picture, you can kind of see why. So if you were to ask a room full of men, which would you pick? A nice cuddly teddy bear or a sex machine? Most men, you know, it's not a big choice. So that's first and foremost, but where we had here two connections, these guys have 1, 2, 3, 4 connections. I'm going to go to the next slide so that we can see them a little bit easier. So we've already talked about Brad and Angie having a very strong physical connection. And it's important to note that Brad didn't leave Jen and then 3 years later meet Angie. He left Jen for Angie. And this is, in my opinion, why. Very strong physical connection, which I think was talked about back when they were doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They had a really strong chemistry. The other thing that they have is Angie's north node of destiny sits right on Brad's asteroid for motherhood. And look at them just collecting and producing their own kids, just kids, kids, kids. So that's a really strong connection. But over and above that, there's this here with this, it's green and it's a VTX, a VTX. His vertex, her vertex. Her vertex is on his ascendant, and the reverse is true up there. The ascendant is the sign on the horizon when you're born, and it's what you see and what other people see when they see you. So what Brad sees is a point of fate, and it's Angie. And what Angie sees is a point of fate, and it's Brad. And the only other time that I've seen this reverse connection where people see each other fatalistically is Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles have the exact same thing. But they don't have it magnified by all these other things. You know, because you've got it magnified here by Angie's Neptune, which is a very dreamy, romantic planet, and Angie's Venus way up there, again, love. So they have very, very strong connections which pulled one away from the other. I want to ask, how am I doing for time so far? Good? Now, what does that mean?
6 minutes.
Okay. When I did this presentation for the other readers, they asked if I could spend a little bit of time talking about what did I think their longevity chances were, and did I think that Brad would ever go back to Jen. I don't think Brad will ever go back to Jen. I think it's a lovey-dovey kind of friendship connection. I think there's too much steam going on in this, between these two. And whether they stay together or not depends on two things. See that 28 up there? That's the planet Uranus, and it squares Venus up there with 28 degrees. When you have a square, it presents challenges and things can change. And that square is on Angie's chart. And she's headed into marriage number 3, because these two are talking about marriage right now. So I think she's the one who would be more likely somewhere along the line to potentially change, but I think it would be hard, given their connections, for her to do that. The other thing that they have is they have an opposition here between Brad's Mercury and Angie's Saturn. Mercury is how you express yourself, how you communicate. And we all know that, we know that Angie, like her reality, which is planet Saturn, is reality. Her reality is, kind of saving the world's children, going out and doing all the humanitarian stuff. And because these planets are in opposite sides, it's kind of like two people that really just don't see things the same way. So if you've ever seen any of the Saturday Night Live skits where Angie's doing all the save the children stuff and Brad's portrayed as some kind of a buffoon who has no idea what's going on, but he's kind of just like got the leash around him, he's following her along, just doing whatever. That's kind of what that signifies. They're really not in sync with that, even though it would appear that maybe they are. There's a bit of a difference, but as long as they respect each other's differences and understand that and agree to support each other, it won't be a problem. So that's my take on that. I think that they're in each other's lives forever, just like Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles. And that's kind of, you don't have to be psychic to know that, because they've got a bunch of kids. So they have to stay together because of the kids. So that wraps up that portion of the presentation, and I just wanted to quickly mention that what I can do with the tarot cards is basically do an astrology reading without having your birth date, time, place, and everything, just by the placement of the cards and what the cards